Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this presentation, and thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Remi Cesaro. I am the founder and director of ZWC City, an engineering consulting business which helps large commercial and industrial facilities on how to minimize waste, reduce cost, and eventually go zero waste. I have prepared a pretty dense presentation on packaging waste. What can you do to resolve the impact of packaging waste? What can you do to minimize cost and use of resources? And what are the new trends coming up? In this presentation, I'm going to tell you a lot about the story of a plastic bottle. How much packaging goes into making it? Where does it come from? What's the impact? And what can you do to minimize costs? I will give you some real-life examples, and then I will talk about the new trends in Singapore, particularly around new regulations. I guess it's no surprise for all of you that plastic is made from petroleum product, and it will originally from an oil field. From there, plastic is being used to transform into a bottle. A plastic bottle will be then filled with water, packed together into a pallet, and then to a distributor. It will then get shipped to an outlet where eventually a consumer will be able to buy your product. That's not the end of the life of your product yet. Once the consumer has finished to drink the water from this bottle, it will most likely discard this bottle. And there's basically two ways it can go on. First solution, the consumer might put this bottle into the general waste bin. In that case, it's a one-way street towards the incineration, where the plastic bottle will be burnt and the ashes will be then sent to Macau landfill. There's an alternative to this story. The alternative is the bottle goes into the recycling bin. And in that case, it will be transported to what we call a material recovering facility, also named for sorting facility. From there, your plastic bottle is being extracted from the general waste streams, and it will eventually go into a recycling site. From there, your bottle is cleaned, transformed into new pallets, and it will go to the manufacturer. And that's what you call closing the loop on waste. At the very top, you have the extraction of virgin resources. The middle is the use and consumption of resources, and at the bottom, you have the loss and destruction of resources. Everybody here is aware that we have a finite world, we have limited resources, and everything must be done to avoid the loss and destruction of resources. Everything must be done to close the loop on waste whenever we can. So let's go back to our supply chain and to our production chain. A plastic bottle always starts with a preform, which is basically a tube like you can see on this picture. This tube is being heated and transformed into a bottle like this one. Bottles get filled, packed all together into pallets, and eventually it will be sent to a distributor, which might or not repack your pallet before sending it to the outlet. So let's look at this particular pallet of 1.5 liter plastic bottles. What is it made of? 7% of it is just packaging. From this 7%, most of it will be related to the weight of your pallet. A quarter will be just the actual packaging of your bottle. And then you have cardboard pad between the layers of your pallet. You have stretch film around your pallet. And you've got the shrink wrap around the packs of bottles. Each of these items represents the cost. Each of these items represents the use of resources and whatever must be done to minimize its use. Waste are being generated all the way the supply chain. And in Singapore, packaging waste represents 1/3 of the waste being generated in Singapore. This is a very significant cost for the community. It's a significance for the business and for the environment. And the question I'm going to answer is, how does it impact businesses? Who is responsible for dealing with the packaging waste? Oops. What can be done? And finally, what is the government doing to minimize the impact of packaging waste in Singapore? If there's one thing I want you to remember today is waste is a sign of inefficiency. It costs money, it takes space, requires manpower, can represent a liability for your business, can affect your public relations, and does impact the environment. The more waste you generate, the more inefficient your business is. The more waste you generate, and the more all of these items you have to deal with. Who is responsible? Packaging is a challenge because the one who puts the packaging in the first place is not the one to deal with the discard along the chain. This plastic bottle here was created by the manufacturer, but the consumer at the end is the one to deal with the actual packaging. You have the plastic wrapper on your pallet, which will be dealt by the distributor and the outlet. What I want to tell you here is, if you want to have a successful program to reduce waste, minimize the impact of your packaging, you must get your suppliers and customers on board. What can be done? You have basically two ways to address the problem. You have upstream and you have downstream. When you look at the upstream side, there's basically two things you can do. First of all, do whatever you can to minimize packaging. Number two, whenever possible, improve the recyclability of your product. And downstream, the one thing you want to do is, whenever possible, maximizing the recycling and avoiding, whenever possible, the use of the incineration. Now, I'm going to give you a few examples of what can be done to minimize resources and what are the benefits for a business. So again, let's look at our 1.5 liter plastic bottle. Generally speaking, a 1.5 liter plastic bottle will weigh altogether 32.3 grams. And best practices can go as low as 28.4 grams. This is approximately 15% reduction in weight from just one single plastic bottle. Let's assume a medium-sized factory with 500,000 bottles every month and $5 per kilogram of food-grade PET resin. If you can reduce the weight of your bottle this way, you are basically talking about $10,000 cost savings in the purchase of resources every single month. How to do it? Redesign your bottle, have a thinner walls, shorten the cap, or as simply as fine-tuning your equipment to make sure that they run at the best performance. Let's look at the stretch film around your pack. Again, it's about minimizing the use of resources. So here, what you can do is to use a thinner film to wrap your bottles together. Again, you have to be very careful that your wrap will be sufficient to hold, resist the mechanical constraint of your pack. Let's again go back to our 500,000 bottle factory. You've got 20,000 packs. Let's assume $2.5 per kilogram of plastic film. And let's assume that you choose to have a thinner film. At the end of the day, we're talking about $4,000 of cost savings from the purchase of resources. This one will be more relevant to manufacturers as well as logistics. And here what I want to talk about is pre-stretch film. As you might know, when you want to transport a pallet from one place to another place, you will first wrap it into plastic to make sure of its reliability, stability, and integrity during the transportation. Now, you can use what we call pre-stretch. So pre-stretch is a type of film that has a memory of form. Here are some numbers. Let's assume for a moment that you reduce by 50% the use of film. We are talking about $700 cost savings every month. Similar to the wrapping of pallet, here's another example which is much more applicable to smaller warehouse. And what I want to talk about is reusable pallet covers. So you have this example here from a company based in the United States, which provides these reusable and returnable pallet covers. Let's assume a very small warehouse with approximately 10 pallets per day, and let's assume that that's very important, that they operate a closed-loop supply chain. In this particular case, they will save $5,000 every single year, and the payback is below 1 year in only 8 months. Now, improving recyclability. If I was going to ask you, what is a recyclable product? I will guess that most of you will not know the exact answer. The ISO 1421 defines when can you claim a product as being recyclable. And basically, whatever you sell to a client, you can claim it as being recyclable if it meets 3 requirements. Number 1, you need to make sure that the consumers that buy your product have access to a recycling stream. Number 2, you need to make sure that you have technologies locally to sort and then recycle your product. And thirdly, you must make sure there's a market behind it to buy your product and reuse it after. As a manufacturer, as a brand owner, and even as government, they usually don't know the answer to these questions. So I just would like to make some advertisement for an organization called Label for Recycling. So Label for Recycling is an organization based in Singapore that helps brand owners and manufacturers to assess the recyclability of the packaging in the local context of Singapore. So if you want to know more about it, check the website, and I'm more than happy to answer questions after it. Now, what about improving the recycling? So every facility, small or large, will generate waste. But the question is, for whatever waste you generate, what can you do to minimize its impact? As a waste auditor, there's 3 questions I will always ask to any facility before I start an audit. How much waste do you generate? How much money do you spend every year? And what is your recycling rate? I will just give you a very theoretical example of what cost savings we are talking about. Let's assume a warehouse with 600 tons of trash every year. Let's assume that they spend $60,000 every year, and they have a recycling rate of 0. Just to put this thing in perspective, $60,000 a year is like having 2 full-time employees with no supervision. Now, let's assume that this warehouse is concerned about the cost of waste management and is looking to engage a professional to assess the impact of waste and what can be done to minimize its cost. So what we do is we start a waste audit. The purpose of a waste audit is first to break down the actual waste generation. For everybody that works here in the logistic chain, it's no surprise that most of the waste will be from pallets. Then you have the cardboard, and then you have the plastic. Let's assume that the audit concludes that 100% of the old corrugated cardboard can be recycled and eventually sold to recycler for $50 a ton. Let's assume that 70% of your plastic can be taken away for free directly by a recycler. And let's assume that you have found a wholesaler that is willing to take your unused pallet for free. With these 3 actions here, we're talking about a recycling rate going from 0% to 97%. We're talking about $64,000 cost savings on waste management. This is a very stereotypical example. I do hope to never see a warehouse with 0% recycling rate, but it gives you an idea of what can be done. Now, let me give you a real-life example of everything I've told you about. Everything that you can do to minimize the waste, improve the recyclability, and improve the recycling. Tesla Motors in the United States, in 2012, started a waste audit. And 4 years later, they successfully got the gold level True Zero Waste certification for the facility. Over 4 years, from 2012 to 2016, they saved $30 million in cost savings from waste hauling fees, revenue generating from recycling, and cost avoided through product reuse programs. I won't go into details of what they have actually done. I will just give you one particular example. So, as a car manufacturer, they will receive spare parts for different parts and components of the car. One of them is a windshield. Every single windshield will be packed in foam and packed into a cardboard box, and all delivered in pallets, as you can see on this picture. The waste auditors say, You are always getting the same product from the exact same supplier. Why don't we work with them to have a returnable and reusable packaging that will remove the use of plastic and cardboard? And that's what they did. They started to use this reusable rack with approximately 15 windshield per rack. And by this one single spare part, they save approximately 300 tons of cardboard every year and reduce the use of plastic foam. But that was not the only benefit. On top of it, it was a huge gain of space in the warehouse, faster production because you could move the rack straight onto the production line, better and safer workplace for employees, and stronger relationship with the supplier because it was a very unique and customized solution with the different parties. Now, I've given you a reason for minimizing waste because we have to protect our resources. I've given you a reason for you to minimize waste because it saves money. If that's not enough, here's a third reason. That's a new trend I want to talk about. This is regulation. In Singapore, the NEA is implementing the mandatory waste reporting framework, which has already impacted shopping malls and hotels. But by 2020, factories, warehouses, convention centers will have to report on the waste they are generating in Singapore. Two things will have to be submitted to the NEA. Number one, facility will have to submit a report showing the monthly generation of waste, general waste, and recyclables. Secondly, they will have to provide a plan of waste reduction targets that they intend to implement in the coming years. There's another framework coming up, and this one is called the mandatory packaging reporting, which might be more relevant for you here. Basically, if you are a business that have a turnover of more than $10 million, you will have to report on the packaging you are introducing to Singapore. That will include manufacturers and packers, retailers, and supermarkets. Two things you will have to report. Again, you have to submit a report showing the quantity and type of packaging you are introducing to Singapore. And two, you have to submit the 3R plan on packaging. So what are your plans in the coming months or years to reduce waste, improve recyclability, improve the reuse of materials in Singapore? The NEA will collect this kind of reports every single year, and we ask businesses to justify on why and how they have committed and successfully achieved their targets. But you don't have to do it alone. In Singapore, we have the chance of having the 3R Fund. The 3R Fund is a program to support businesses in implementing programs that will improve the recyclability or reduce the amount of waste going to incineration. Basically, if there's any program you know of that could reduce the amount of trash going to incineration by at least 100 tons over the next 1 to 3 years, the NEA is ready to fund 80% of your project up to $1 million. This is a very substantial funding, which includes manpower, equipment, and any other costs relevant to the project. This 80% project value has some conditions, depending on are you a member of the SPA, is it out-of-the-shelf equipment that you intend to install. If you want to know more about it, I'm more than happy to answer questions. But how does it work? So basically, first you apply for the grant. If it gets approved, you can start the actual project. 2 months after successful commissioning of a program, you will get 50% of the grant. You get audited after 6 months, you get 80% of the grant, and at the end of the project, you get the full 100%. Now, I've told you that we need to protect our resources. We need to close the loop on waste whenever we can. I've told you that packaging was 1/3 of the waste in Singapore. I've told you that waste is a sign of inefficiency, and everything must be done to minimize waste, improve recyclability, and improve on the recycling. I've given you the 2 major regulations that are coming up in Singapore over the next few years. I've told you about the 3R Fund. Now I will tell you briefly what ZWC can do to help you if any of these items are relevant to you. So ZWC is an engineering consulting business that help companies to minimize the cost on disposal and improve the material use efficiency in your facility. Label for Recycling, that I've mentioned briefly, is a non-for-profit organization that help brand owners and manufacturers to assess the recyclability of their packaging. If there's any question about this organization, please let me know and I will answer any question you may have. As a consulting business, intend to help businesses from the start to the end, which means from the moment a business say, we want to look at our trash, to the end where they eventually get certified as a zero waste, we can help you along the way. We tend to work with large commercial and industrial facilities such as warehouse, manufacturers, but as well shopping malls, schools, and hotels. Myself, I am the lead auditor of the Zero Waste City. I am a true advisor by the US Green Building Council, which means that I can advise you on how to achieve the true Zero Waste certification in Singapore. I am a member of WIMRAS and a CMVP. Now, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. If any questions arise after this presentation, here are my contact details. Is there any way we can encourage people to do more recycling? The answer is yes. The question depends on how you want to do it and who you are talking to. So, when you are talking about businesses and running normal operation or business as usual, for manufacturers and warehouse particularly, the question is not so much about how to motivate people to do business, to do recycling. It's more around what can you do to make recycling a good business case. And that's typically what we do. So as I've shown you before, recycling is a good business case for manufacturers or warehouses. When you're talking about dealing with recycling in offices, which is much more individual-centric operations, there's many things you can do. You can in-phase the protection of the planet. You can in-phase the need to protect our planet to partners with NGOs to show the commitment and the interaction you have within the community. So typically, when we do a waste audit, we also assess what are the waste management practices in your facility, which include, do you have proper signage of your waste bins? Do you have high level of contamination of your bins? We can help your employees to understand where does the trash go once it goes into the bin. Once people understand that when you go to the recycling bin, it goes to a sorting facility and then a recycling facility, they will be more trustful in this recycling bin and more willing to actually do their part for it. Could you elaborate more on the true zero waste certification? Sure. In worldwide so far, there are two major certifications for zero waste. So maybe I should tell you what is zero waste first. So zero waste means that your facility or your community is able to divert 90% of its trash from incineration or landfill. So 90% of the waste you eventually generate should either be reused, reduced, or recycled. And there's two certifications, two bodies that deliver certification for facilities. The first one is called UL, which is a UL 2799, which is called Zero Waste to Landfill. The only thing this certification does is making sure that you have actually achieved 90% diversion rate. The True Zero Waste certification, so TRUE stands for Total Resource Use Efficiency, and this one is administered by the US Green Building Council. Again, it will verify that you have actually achieved 90% diversion rate, but you also look into, are you having a leadership role in promoting the concept of zero waste? Are you actively looking for suppliers that will provide product with recycled content? Are you actively tracking where your trash goes and how you can eventually buy it back from recycler? So the True Zero certification is has a much broader scope of work. It is a point-based certification that requires to have at least 31 points over 81. And you have obviously different level of certification based on your number of points. What alternative to cling wrap for fresh produce. So here you have to weigh the challenge between extending the lifetime of your fresh product versus the cost of packaging and the cost of bringing new products. So let's assume an eggplant which is wrapped with 4 grams of plastic film. These 4 grams of plastic film are improving the lifespan of your eggplant on the shelf by 7 days. And these 7 days can be long enough for a consumer to eventually buy your eggplant and remove this eggplant from going to incineration or landfill. So when you are looking for alternatives, the question you want to ask yourself is, what is the original goal of your plastic wrapping around your fresh produce? Is it to extend the lifespan of your product? Is it just for packaging or marketing purposes? Is it just for hygiene and quality purposes? Or is it for something else? Depending on the answer to these questions, you might assess the ability to not have packaging at all, or to use alternative or returnable alternative. If you are looking for a large implementation, you could imagine to provide a returnable packaging with your fresh produce that the consumer might bring back in exchange of a voucher or a discount of the next purchase, which will bring a loyalty program within your customers, reduce the use of resources, but again, you have to look at the whole cost of having a reverse supply chain to bring this product back to the facility. All right, so this is the end of my presentation. There's a few more questions. If you have any question, I'm more than happy to answer. And if you have any question, you can always contact me with my email address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Remi Cesaro.